Dr. Heidi McRae, a GP who worked tirelessly for equal access to medicines, has just lost her own battle with cancer. As sad as that is, Rachel Smalley is finding inspiration in her work. And Rachel, so you're writing about Heidi this week. Tell us a bit about her.
Dr. Heidi McRae was a remarkable woman, actually. I first came into contact with her on the Medicine Gap, which is my storytelling project, which looks at New Zealanders and their lack of access to modern medicines. And Heidi was a GP who herself had a delayed mammogram. She really pushed to get a mammogram 3 or 4 months late. And it was then that she was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And triple negative is the most aggressive of the breast cancers. And there is no precision or targeted medicine in this country that is funded to treat it. So the options are surgery and the options are chemotherapy. And Heidi went on something of a journey to access and self-fund her own treatment. She lost her life to it in November. But she was a woman who throughout her career had really strongly advocated to create far greater equity in our healthcare. It was one of her great passions, one of her drivers. She had an extraordinary personality, even right up until the end. She talked about having a rich life, but she felt very strongly that New Zealanders needed access to international standard healthcare. And she'd really been focused in primary care as a GP, but obviously following her diagnosis, suddenly became more and more aware of where we were failing New Zealanders in our health system.
Okay, so there's a couple of points here. One is, of course, the effects of the COVID lockdowns, and she herself was a bit of a victim of that. So if you just talk about that a bit first, Rachel, the problems we've seen there.
So it was interesting in a conversation. Heidi once told me that you may remember a lot of corporates got you to hold like a little thermostat just near your forehead. It didn't touch your forehead, and that would register if you had a temperature or not before you entered a building. And Heidi started to pick up that she had a temperature, but she didn't have COVID and she didn't have anything wrong with her. And she then had to go through a process of trying to work out where this temperature was coming from. Long story short, she was pushing and pushing for various screening, mammograms and what have you. She had been delayed. Her mammogram had been delayed by COVID. It was some months later when she really had to push, and she felt dreadful for doing it, but she really pushed for that mammogram. And it was in that mammogram that it was revealed that she had cancer, that they discovered the cancer. So her access to that initial screening treatment there was, or program, was delayed because of our COVID response.
Okay, so we're in a position where something like 50,000 women are behind on their mammograms, which is worrying. And of course, the other part to this is, as you say, the access to the actual treatment as well.
Yeah, so the Breast Cancer Foundation has said over 50,000 women are overdue for a mammogram. Now, Heidi felt very strongly about that. The Breast Cancer Foundation has said the same. They've said do everything you can, rattle the cage, get in for your screening, because with those sorts of numbers, without wishing to alarm people, it is a given that there will be women who are in need of mammograms now who will have early stage breast cancer. And as we know with cancer, early identification is one of the key areas with which to target and treat and get on top of some of these cancers. So that is one area for sure. And the other area is that we treat some forms of breast cancer, and we don't have very good access to cancer medicines at all, but there are a couple of cancer medicines for breast cancer which are funded, and that's largely because of women who have really lobbied hard at the government and really put a lot of pressure and a lot of petitions, and they've walked on Parliament to get access to these cancer medicines. But triple negative remains one of the breast cancers that is not treated. So only surgery, which is largely lumpectomies or mastectomies, and then, good old chemotherapy. But there are other treatments, of course, that you can access on top of that. MedSafe has just approved Keytruda, for the treatment of triple negative breast cancer. It's not funded, it's approved for use here. That's the medicine that Heidi McRae accessed for her treatment. It's around $60,000, and then the government lobs on another $9,000 for GST. So, it's a fairly costly medicine. Heidi always described herself as privileged for accessing it. But there are other medicines funded around the world too. Another one's Tecentriq, which is really effective but expensive for triple negative as well. So it's undertreated here, and it's the most aggressive of the breast cancers. And I think equally concerning here too is that it affects women largely in their 40s and their 50s. So quite young women are diagnosed with triple negative. And that's why Heidi in particular was really pushing for us to access this medicine. One of the other treatments as well at the moment is radiation therapy, Maria, and that's when you may have a lumpectomy, you may have a mastectomy, then you might have chemotherapy, and then they have radiation as well, and that kind of zaps any of those cancer cells that you might have missed. Now, this week, news broke that actually we have so few specialists in this area, and we don't have the equipment, that now some women are either forced to or have been encouraged to have mastectomies because the wait for radiation therapy is simply too long. So that's a really distressing situation. Women who don't need to have their breasts removed are, as a way of trying to elongate their life because they can't get access to radiation therapy.
Many challenges, and I think perhaps Heidi's last words to you are what's keeping you going. Just perhaps tell us what she said to you.
Yeah, she actually joked, Maria, and she said, "Why didn't I enter politics?" And I said to her, this is when I went and saw her in hospice about 12 days before she died, and I said, "No, I wouldn't want to go into politics," but she said, "Well, keep going." And she feels very strongly, and there are many New Zealanders out there, many New Zealanders on Give a Little who are fundraising for access to some of these life-saving medicines, but in particular, there are a number of rare disorders, but also cancer that we don't treat in this country. So I did go and visit her in hospice. Because of her, she was immunocompromised, and because of COVID, we'd been really well connected through the phone and through social media, but we'd never met face to face. So she asked me to come and see her in hospice. And she was incredibly strong and incredibly brave, but she really urged me and anybody else who was felt strongly about New Zealanders getting access to medicines to keep going. She said it's a political problem and it's solvable.
Rachel Smalley, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Maria.